Mr. Speaker, will the decades-long national news media cover-up of the brutality and the violence of abortion methods ever end? Will Americans ever be told of the horrifying details as to how and how often abortionists dismember, decapitate, and chemically poison innocent babies? Will Americans ever be informed by a conscientious, unbiased national news media that in the past 40 years, over 55 million child victims have been brutally killed by abortion, a staggering loss of children's lives that equates to the entire population of England, and that many women have been hurt physically, emotionally, and psychologically. And according to the Centers for Disease Control, and this is a very conservative estimate from CDC, over 400 women have actually died from legal abortions. Will Americans ever be told that of the 55 million children, Planned Parenthood alone claims responsibility for destroying 6 million babies, and that just 2 weeks ago, a Planned Parenthood leader in Florida testified at a legislative hearing on a state initiative to protect born-alive infants, that even when a child survives an abortion, the decision to assist or kill the born-alive infant should be, quote, up to the woman, her family, and her physician. In other words, if a child intended to be aborted survives the assault, the choice to kill remains, so-called after-birth abortion. Isn't that extreme child abuse? Murdering newborns in the abortion clinic, seems to me, is indistinguishable from any other child predator wielding a knife or gun. Why isn't the child also seen as a patient in need of medical care, warmth, nutrition, and dare I say, love? Now another national media cover-up. In this case, even when a Jeffrey Dahmer-like murder trial of an abortionist named Kermit Gosnell, who ran the benign-sounding women's medical clinic, unfolds in a Philadelphia courtroom, replete with shocking testimony of beheadings, unfathomable abuse, death, and body parts in jars. To this day, the national news media remains uninterested, woefully indifferent, AWOL. Why the censorship? Why Gosnell's House of Horrors, his trial, fails to this day to attract any serious and meaningful national news reporting? Dr. Kermit Gosnell is on trial for 8 counts of murder. 1 count is for the death of a woman, a victim who died during an abortion in his clinic. 7 counts are for babies who survived their abortion and were born alive, but then killed by severing their spinal cords with a pair of scissors. In the words of the grand jury report, Gosnell had a simple solution for unwanted babies. He killed them. He didn't call it that. He called it ensuring fetal demise, a nice euphemism. The way he ensured fetal demise was by sticking scissors in the back of the baby's neck and cutting the spinal cord. He called that snipping. Over the years, according to the grand jury report, there were hundreds of snippings. Indeed, the national news media has not only taken a pass and looked the other way, but their stunning indifference has done a grave disservice to Gosnell's victims, the woman killed, other women injured, and children slaughtered by Gosnell. Because of the national news media's indefensible silence, because of their failure to report, other women and children at other abortion mills might also be at risk. Indeed, the grand jury report, again in January of 2011, pointedly pointed out and noted that in absence of press coverage and gross negligence by the health department in Pennsylvania, enabled Gosnell to show a, quote, contemptuous disregard for the health, safety, and dignity of his patients that continued for 40 years. Right from the beginning of Roe versus Wade, he was overlooked by a media that was disinterested. Some media commentators, however, are beginning to take note of the national news media blackout and the bias that undergirds and is inherent in that blackout. Yesterday, the Investor's Business Daily editorial was the title, Newton in the Clinic. The media ignores the Gosnell trial. Begins in pertinent part, media bias. A basketball coach who shoves and curses at his players merits constant coverage by a media transfixed by Newton. But a Philadelphia doctor on trial for murdering a woman and 7 babies, it's ignored. Those who get their news from the 3 major networks have probably not heard of Dr. Kermit Gosnell, now on trial in Philadelphia, charged with 7 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of third-degree murder for killing 7 babies who survived abortions and a woman who died after a botched painkiller abortion. He points out, or the editorial points out, according to the Media Research Center, in 1 week, Rice, that's the coach from Rutgers, received 41 minutes, 26 seconds on ABC, CBS, and NBC in 36 separate news stories. Gosnell received 0 coverage. The editorial points out, if Dr. Gosnell had walked into a nursery and shot 7 infants with an AR-15, it would be national news and the subject of presidential hand-wringing. In today's edition of USA Today, columnist Kirsten Powers writes, infant beheadings, severed baby's feet in jars, a child screaming after it was delivered during an abortion procedure. Haven't heard of those sickening accusations? It's not your fault. Since the murder trial of Pennsylvania abortion doctor Kermit Gosnell began on March 18th, there has been precious little coverage of the case that should be on every news show and on the front page. She goes on to write in her editorial or column, a LexisNexis search shows none of the news shows of the 3 major networks has mentioned the Gosnell trial in the last 3 months. The exception is when Wall Street Journal columnist Peggy Noonan hijacked a segment of the Meet the Press show. Again, I ask my colleagues and I ask the news media, why the blackout? Will America ever be told the brutality of abortion and the violence that is commonplace inside the abortion industry? Or will the media, the national media especially, continue to censor and censor, and in this case, censor a trial of the century that exposes all too inconvenient truth that not only are unborn children destroyed in these killing centers by being decapitated and dismembered, but that even babies who survive the abortion can't escape the deadly hand of these child predators.